Hello, and welcome to All Raiders Talk, episode 13. This could be the 2026 Raiders Draft Class Review. And with that, I am your host, Hunter. I'm just a fan of the Raiders and enjoy talking Raiders football, so hope you all enjoy the conversation. If you're watching on YouTube today, thanks for watching. You can also listen to me via audio form in podcast via like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you're listening via audio only, you can find me in video form on YouTube at All Raiders Talk. I'm also on Twitter, X at All Raiders Talk as well. So with that said, let's get to the topic at hand, which is going to be doing the review of the 2026 Raiders draft class. If you've listened or if you watched previous videos, I did intend to kind of split these up a little bit more because I did one after the first round. Fortunately didn't quite work out schedule-wise, so I'm just going to do the full review. So this is just going to be the full review of the class. So I've talked about, obviously, Fernando Mendoza already, and I've also talked to a few of the players we ended up drafting because some were players that I said we should look at in the later rounds. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and kind of transition everything here. Okay, so with that, let's get right into it. First overall, of course, we ended up selecting Fernando Mendoza, quarterback from Indiana. I know I've kind of talked about him previously a couple different times here now, so I'll just kind of quickly go over him again. So prototypical size, willing to sit in the pocket, take hits, great arm, can make any throw, because not only can he kind of make any throw, he can make any throw with precision. So his arm is going to be good enough to kind of hit the short, immediate, and the long ball. Not only hit him, but hit him with accuracy. Because there's something like sometimes, like let's say Joe Milton, for instance, has a better arm, but not necessarily the accuracy or the playmaking ability than like Fernando Mendoza does. So his arm is more than good enough to make every throw, but not only hit him with accuracy. He's a passer first quarterback, but he has enough athleticism to move around when needed. And he has great preparation. He's just great preparation entirely. As I kind of said this kind of previously, before the Heisman Trophy, actual ceremony, he actually went and learned the faces and names of all other Heisman Trophy winners, so that way if he ran into them, he would know who they were, which is just kind of speaks to the kind of person he is. In addition, during his pro day, before he scripted and planned out every single pass that he threw to his wide receivers, and when he actually did each throw, he said the type of throw he was going to make and who he was actually throwing it to, just so that way you can kind of speak highly of like him and how he preps for anything, just kind of in general. Fernando Mendoza also kind of idolizes Tom Brady, which of course is great, since we have Tom Brady as an owner for the Raiders, so he kind of has that kind of mentor and kind of personal kind of favorite and kind of who he idolizes and who he tries to play kind of with. We will see whether or not he plays early on. We do have Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins will be the starter. I mean, there will be an open competition. I don't necessarily expect Fernando Mendoza to beat out Kirk Cousins week one. It's possible. I just don't necessarily expect it, and I don't think the Raiders aren't really necessarily are hoping that he wins week one. I think they want him to sit as long as possible, learn behind Cousins, learn the playbook, learn from Tom Brady, learn from everybody, and then just kind of whenever they feel he is ready, then kind of get into the field and actually go. With that, just this is the only one I kind of have stats for as far as for the 2025 season. But he had 273 completions off 379 attempts, 35 passing yards, 41 passing touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Of course, he was the Heisman Trophy winner. My favorite player comp, of course, some people have said Kirk Cousins, some people have said Matt Ryan. My personal favorite player comp is Carson Palmer. I know Carson Palmer wasn't necessarily the best Raider, but he was great with Cincinnati, and he was great with the Cardinals after us. The situation with the Raiders was just a bad situation all the way around. It's hard to necessarily blame Carson Palmer for the situation he was kind of in, but I do like it's that enough mobility, great arm, great pocket passer, kind of does what he needs to do, keep the play alive enough to just kind of make the play. But just that kind of gritty, smart quarterback, and that's kind of why, like I said, he reminds me of Carson Palmer a lot, and that's why it's like my favorite comp. So that was going to be our first overall pick. And let's go into the second round. So we did end up trading down from 36th to 38th overall, moved down a little bit. We ended up passing on guys like Denzel Boston, which is fine with me. If you've heard a little bit of my content, I wasn't the hugest fan of Denzel Boston, so I'm okay with us kind of passing. We also passed on Mike Macdonald. I did like Mike Macdonald, but he's very much just a run stuffer, so he was a little bit more limited of a player. But the Raiders actually ended up in the second round selecting Trayden Stukes, defensive back from Arizona. So he's defensive back. He's probably going to be a safety. He played a lot of kind of dime. He played in the slot this last year at Arizona, but did play in safety, and that's kind of what he was drafted to be, is an actual safety there. Plays the ball well. 29 pass defense, 7 interceptions in college. Fluid mover, doesn't slow down when he's when turning his body, so he's able to kind of really stick with anyone. Only 1 penalty since 2023, so he's able to play the ball very well, play the wide receiver very well, play the tight end very well without actually being grabby, without actually causing penalties. Great eye discipline. He can actually follow the quarterback's eyes without biting on it. He's able to kind of like follow the wide receiver's movements and basically to make sure he's able to stick with them and make the right play. And he's very rarely ever out of position. He's also a great RAS athlete, so that's like I said, that's the relative athletic score if you haven't heard it, and it's basically how is the player's 40 other workout items as far as how is he as an athlete compared to other people at his position and his size. So he's a 9.95 RAS athlete. It goes out of 10, which is going to be the highest. So he's better than like 99% of athletes just about as far as other safeties compared to his specific size. He's a very willing tackler. He doesn't always wrap up well, which is kind of his kind of one big issue, so he needs to be a better tackler. So he's in the right spot. He goes in, puts his arms out essentially, but he just doesn't kind of really squeeze in on the tackle. So sometimes the actual like running back or the wide receiver will kind of be able to break loose just because he doesn't always have the best tackling skills. But he's a very willing tackler, and he's very willing to kind of put himself in those positions to make the tackle. With that said, next we're going to have K'Ron Crawford. He's going to be edge player. He was selected from Auburn in the third round, pick 67, 22 years old. Oh, speaking of age, the other one thing about Trayden Stukes is he's going to be 25 during the season, which is kind of the only other kind of downside about him. He's a little bit older player. So with that, let me get back to Crawford here. He's 22 years old, 6'4", 253, so he's got a good size for an edge rusher. He offers that like 3-4, 4-3 kind of flexibility. He can kind of play edge kind of in both aspects. 3-4 like DN, not necessarily, maybe is a little small for that, but he can be an outside linebacker in a 3-4, and he's also big enough to play defensive end in a 4-3. He's a very athletic pass rusher. He's a high motor player. He goes until the whistle, so as long as the play's going, he's gonna be there trying to make a play on the ball. He also had one of the best pass rush win rates compared to other edges, like 18.3%. So he was better than Kelvin Falk, which was going to be his defensive end teammate at Auburn. He was better than all but 4 or 5 edge rushers last year as far as in college. So he's very much going to be a high percentage pass rusher. The run game is kind of really where he needs his biggest improvement. He's going to be coming to the NFL a little bit more as a kind of a pass rush specialist, but he will be able to play kind of right away. We did end up trading Tyree Wilson during the draft, who was also going to be kind of a little bit more of that 3-4, 4-3 kind of end. So that kind of really opens up right away extra snaps for Kieran Crawford, and I do think he's going to be a great player for us. He may be a little bit limited as a rookie just because he's going to need to develop a little bit more as a run stuffer, but he's like the athlete already. His build is kind of perfect as far as his actual like strength and conditioning. A lot of times some players, they kind of need to add 15-20 pounds of muscle in order to be good NFL players. I don't think that's something that Crawford needs to do. He just kind of needs to kind of learn more of just kind of not only additional kind of hand moves, a little bit more kind of pass rush moves, but mostly focus on like the run game and actually playing against the run. So that's going to be Keion Crawford, edge out of Auburn. Next, in the third round, we selected Trey Zune, the third out of Texas A&M. So he's going to have this could be he played mostly left tackle in college. He did play a few games at center, but he's most likely to be a guard at the next level. But he does have a little bit of five-position flexibility, which is good as far as when you're looking for depth at actual offensive line. He's going to come in day one, compete for a guard position with JPJ and Charles Rogers. I don't necessarily think he has the greatest size to play like right tackle, so I don't think he'll necessarily compete with like Glaze and Grant, but it's something he'll most likely compete at guard with Charles and JPJ. He's very patient, smooth footwork. He has excellent hand placement and control. He's like I said, mentioned kind of before, he's a great position flexibility. One of the things about it, like if you're a PFF guy, I'm not necessarily the hugest PFF guy, but if you do prescribe or if you do kind of follow PFF, I mean, he had what I believe is like one of the highest pass rush protection grade, pass protection grades kind of ever for like a season. So it's something, he was like a huge PFF graded player. I know like analytics, a lot of people who kind of are more of analytic people also tended to really like Trey Zune compared to most. He is a better pass blocker than a run blocker though, so it is something where we'll probably end up being a little bit more of a run first team. So it is something he's really going to have to develop a little bit more in the run game if he's going to be able to be a true starter for us. I do think he does have that potential. It's just something where it may not be there right away. And so 23 years old, so not necessarily an old prospect, but a little bit older, 6'6", 312 pounds, so like more than good as far as like offensive line size, and that was third round, pick 91. Next, we're going to follow it up with probably the biggest gamble and the second biggest splash outside of Fernando Mendoza, and that was going to be in the fourth round, pick 101. This could be Jermon McCoy, cornerback out of Tennessee, 6'1", 192 pounds, age 20, so a very young player. He has played 2 total seasons. But in those 2 seasons, he had 18 pass deflections, 6 interceptions. He has great ball skills, probably one of the greatest ball skills of any cornerback in this class. He's very serviceable in the run game. Corners aren't often the best tacklers, but Jermon McCoy is more than serviceable in that regard. Very smooth hips, very patient in man coverage, can play zone. He has great hands and as far as jamming skills, so he's more than happy to kind of get right up in the line of scrimmage, jam, get wide receivers kind of off their mark and off their actual route right off the get-go. Injury concerns was the big thing about him. If there were no injuries, Jermon McCoy would have been a top 10 pick in this draft. That's obviously not the case. He does have a bunch of injury concerns, which is why he ended up in the fourth round. It is something where he has a specific knee issue. If the knee issue requires surgery, he'll likely miss an entire season. He did actually do have a pro day, and all the reports all the reports from like his medical staff was that he is good to go, that the surgery is not necessarily needed but could be needed. Jermon McCoy did actually say that he would follow the Raiders as far as what the medical staff wants. So if he needs to have surgery, if that's what the Raiders medical staff believe he needs, then he will go along and have the surgery. But if he doesn't believe he needs the surgery, then he won't have it. But the other biggest thing about because just because if he would be out for a year, that doesn't necessarily mean he would have dropped this far. But the other biggest thing is because of the type of surgery he needs, it has about a 10 to 25% chance to fail or need to be redone an additional time if he does need the surgery. And if he gets this surgery and then he needs the surgery again after that, well, that's really kind of where things go bad, because it probably would be a career ender if he needs a second surgery. So that's not saying like this if the Raiders do have him have surgery, not necessarily, it's not saying this surgery would be the career ender, but if he needs it again, I'm not a medical expert. This isn't like me giving you all this kind of information. This is just kind of based off what was reported about the type of surgery and kind of why he kind of fell. So if there's some more official item as far as the medicals, then you can kind of point to those medical kind of experts. This is just kind of me reporting or me stating kind of what those people who were reporting it about the medical side. But like I said, otherwise, this is the biggest gamble. This is the kind of pick that I think the Raiders should gamble for. Like, do I want us to win a Super Bowl this year? Yes, always want us to win a Super Bowl every year. That's not likely going to happen. Very much likely not going to happen. So what do you want to how do you best go about improving the team? You build a team that can be successful and go to win playoff games and go towards winning a Super Bowl in 2027 or later. Well, this is a kind of pick where even if you do have him have the surgery, well, then you're potentially adding a top 10 pick for next year. Or if he is going to be healthy and doesn't need the surgery, well, then you're having him play this year, learn, grow, and have him next year when we're actually be competitive and actually go towards winning the playoffs and a Super Bowl. If he never ends up working out, sure, the pick will be a failure, but the actual process behind the pick, the thought process of the gamble, taking the chance and taking it for a home run pick, more than understand it. I will never fault the team for making this kind of pick, so I do kind of appreciate them making this type of gamble. Next, as far as fourth round, it's going to be Mike Washington Jr., running back from Arkansas. So this could be another high RAS player, probably one of the highest RAS players, running backs this year. He's also a very kind of fast player. I think he had the fastest 40 time, if I remember correctly, but he was pick 122, 6'1", 223 pounds, and age 22. So he's a little bit bigger of a running back, but also had some of the best speed and performance, vision and pacing to locate and hit the correct holes. So he can play very much kind of in a wide zone scheme. So he very much fits our kind of system. He can kind of get out, find the actual hole, and do that kind of that one cut and go. So he's going to be able to fit perfectly in that kind of system. He can fit with Ashton Jeanty. Whenever Jeanty's probably going to play 70% of the snaps, but you need someone who can take those other 30%. And we didn't have anyone like that at this point. I mean, our second backup or our backup outside of Jeanty was Dylan Labe. And look, don't get me wrong, I like Labe, but Labe's not really a true backup running back. He's more of a special teams guy, and like you put him in on third down on some pass situations, since he's got a little bit better of a pass catcher, a little bit better kind of in that kind of in space, as far as like that type of player. So getting someone like Mike Washington Jr. Is going to be a great kind of fit for us. His biggest need for kind of improvement is kind of pass protection. He didn't pass protect necessarily a lot in Arkansas, so it's something where in order to start seeing a little bit of the field more often, especially in passing downs, he needs to improve in pass protection. Otherwise, if you see him out there, that's going to telegraph that he's going to be trying to actually receive the ball or run, that it's not necessarily going to be a passing play where he's going to be staying and blocking very often. So that was going to be our fourth round pick as far as Mike Washington Jr. Next is going to be in round 5, pick 150. This could be Dalton Johnson, defensive back, also out of Arizona. So we ended up taking both Arizona players, trading Dukes and Dalton Johnson. Johnson also played safety and some nickel. Apologize for the misspelling here. Yeah. I'm not the best speller. But yeah, so played safety and nickel, but he's going to be more of a true kind of safety as well. So it's something where both of these guys are not necessarily going to be kind of dime players. I mean, you'll definitely see Trace Dukes play some dime, but both of them are going to be kind of safeties. Dalton Johnson, very physical and good tackler, a better tackler than Trayden Stukes, so he's going to be able to kind of get in right to the line, hit a play, hit the tackle, hit the running back, hit the ball carrier, make the tackle. He's also a special teams player, so he has no problem playing special teams. I mean, especially once you start getting to these 5, 6, 7, being able to play special teams just kind of helps what makes these players make the roster. He does tend to read routes pretty well for, like a later round pick. Something once you start getting to those later round guys, they don't always read, the routes super well, but he does. He's a pretty good as far as being in kind of the right position, and is a pretty good on the ball. Not the greatest. He does need to add a little bit more play strength just because, not that he's necessarily that small, but he's a little bit smaller, and he kind of, not that he gets bullied, but it's just, it's harder for him to be a little bit more physical than some other players, and sometimes he kind of loses the physicality game against some receivers and against some like blockers and against some like kind of stronger running backs as far as in that position. So that's kind of where he needs to kind of add a little bit of a bulk to the body, but otherwise kind of a good developmental kind of player late. And to continue the DB run, we ended up selecting 4 defensive backs this year. So it is something where we definitely went after DBs very often in this draft. I know Spytek talked about safety specifically being a numbers game and needing more numbers and selecting 2 safeties and 2 cornerbacks. And like I said, that's where it continues here. Round 5, pick 175, and that's he's a Massis, cornerback out of Cal, 6'1", 179, age 21. He's going to be good on ball skills, 18 pass deflection, 7 ints in college, good stop and start skills. So whenever a player tries to stop and move in order to try to make a different kind of play, kind of change his route up, either or do like a comeback, he's very good as far as like stopping on a dime and then being able to start again in order to kind of keep up or keep moving with the wide receiver, so he doesn't necessarily get bit super often. Definitely much more of a zone coverage kind of cornerback. He's not really as much about a man. He's not as good in man, so it's something about focusing more on those zone, which is what we're going to be mostly going to be kind of playing zone, so he kind of fits more of that defense style. And he does have enough speed to kind of follow the deep threats, so if he needs to follow like a wide receiver running a 9-go, which is like a vert route, he's able to have enough speed to keep up with them. So it's something where it's not like he's going to be kind of behind or not able to kind of keep up with some of those faster wide receivers. With that said, he can be a little handsy at times. He's had a few penalties just because even though he has good enough speed, it's not great speed. Even though he has good stop and start, he's not always the best at like he stops, sees it, and it's just that like start is starts, takes a good first step, but then it just takes a moment for him in order to kind of pick up that speed again. So even though he has great stop and start, it's just that start is just a slow first step, a slow second step, and sometimes it kind of allows him to be a little bit grabby at times in order to kind of keep up with those stop and start moves by receivers. But that's kind of some things that just kind of you see as kind of these later round picks here. And now it's going to be his Keem Massis, cornerback from Cal. And then in round 6, pick 195, we went with Malik Benson, wide receiver out of Oregon, 6 foot, 189 pounds, age 23. So this could be more of like a deep threat, so 4.3 speed, deep threat target. He runs a lot of like the 9 ball, the vert, able to kind of really get downfield. He actually and he tracks the ball deep, well. So even if they don't necessarily throw a perfect ball, or the quarterback needs to alter the throw a little bit in order to put the ball in a spot for the wide receiver to make a play on it. He does track the ball really well as far as kind of maneuvering a little bit more inside or outside depending on what is needed or what the actual DBs are doing in order to so that way he can kind of make a play on it. He's going to be like a special teams player. He's a returner. I know he had at least one return touchdown this year. He's also improved each season, so it's something where he's like constantly kind of improved. Each season's been a little bit better than before. As he's kind of been a deep threat player and he played in the Oregon offense, Oregon doesn't always have like a very diverse route tree. And like I said, because he was kind of a deep threat, he also didn't, need to really develop a diverse route tree. So that's probably going to be his biggest thing is he definitely has a usage. There is a role for him, but if he wants to be more than just kind of like a deep threat guy, he's going to need to develop a more diverse route tree in order to, I said, see the field a little bit more often. And then last but not least, as far as picks go, we selected Brandon Cleveland, defensive tackle out of NC State, and this could be, in the 7th round, pick 229. It's going to be 6'3", 307, age 21. So Brandon Cleveland is going to be our true kind of nose tackle. We did need one kind of going in this draft. I know it does appear that the Raiders are higher on like J.J. Pacis we drafted in the 6th round last year, and Pacis bulked up to that 330 range, so he's going to be kind of one of those other kind of nose stuffing kind of nose tackles, and that's kind of where Pacis performed best in college before actually dropping some weight and picking back up. But Cleveland's going to be able to kind of rotate in with Pacis as far as get it to be that true nose tackle, be that run stuffer. Doesn't really offer much as far as pass rush skills, but he's strong enough to take on the double team, which is kind of what you want at a nose tackle. He has a really firm base to kind of hold his ground. So essentially, if he needs to plug up a hole or stop a hole, he can get in there, kind of stick his feet, keep a good strong base and not allow the offensive line to kind of move him, so he can really get kind of holding his offensive line. Once he actually grabs a ball carrier, he really doesn't let go. So even though he's more of a kind of a space eater, whenever an actual ball carrier does get with him and he's able to kind of reach out and kind of actually grab a hold of him, he's really good about kind of holding him and actually doesn't let the carrier kind of get past him in that regard. He doesn't offer much as far as versatility either. He's really more of just kind of a true nose tackle. He's going to be playing like over the center or in like the one gap, kind of sitting right on the other, in between the center and the guard on kind of either side or right over the top. That's kind of really going to be where he sees play. He's not really going to be more of like a 3-tack or a defense tackle. But we need more run stuffers. We need people to kind of rotate in to actually stop the run. You can't get to 3rd and 8 without making 2 plays on 1st and 2nd down. So that's where a guy like Brandon Cleveland will be able to come in and kind of help us here. So that's going to be overall as far as our actual draft. Those are going to be our kind of picks as far as who we actually went with. And then next, the next video I'm kind of going to do is going to be, we have kind of about 15 spots for undrafted free agents. Though some of the names kind of already come out. I know we actually are agreed to the Tokyo Toe, which is going to be the kicker out of Hawaii from Japan, IPP player, but also, like I said, played at Hawaii. And I'll kind of go over some of the actual undrafted free agent players. So that's kind of be what I'm going to be doing next. So this was kind of the breakdown, like a quick breakdown of all the players we'd selected. The next video, it's going to be kind of breaking down those undrafted free agents. And then probably after that, I haven't quite decided yet, but I'll probably could do more position by positions. Previous videos I kind of did just a kind of a more of a overview of the offense, overview of the defense. And then we did some different breakdowns, some mock drafts. Now we did just an overview of our actual draft. Next is the overview of our undrafted free agents. Next, it'll probably be some positional players, unless there's some other news to kind of talk about. So that's kind of an idea of what the future kind of holds from here. With that said, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Like, comment, subscribe. It's appreciated. Till next time, take care, y'all. And, have a good one. Peace.